which is point number 6. Now, point number 6, I felt the need that this is something, in my opinion, that needs to be addressed across the continent of Africa in order to foster development and growth. Point number 6 is basically very simple and it's very technical, and it is for us to stop relying on charity. Now, I know I talked a little bit about charity before, but this time I want us to look at stop relying on charity and start being charitable. Before I go ahead and explain what I mean by this, I'm going to cite an example. In Dallas, where I live, there's a hospital known as Parkland. Now, this hospital is a government hospital, but what people do is people donate money to that hospital, and it's a very beautiful hospital. And most of the times, people who cannot afford insurance basically get free treatment at that hospital once you qualify for the Parkland plan. Now, this is a hospital that is run on charity. Yes, the government does subsidize some of the bills and all of that, but kind people in any state in America often donate to help not just this hospital, but there are a lot of hospitals like that in America where that is happening. Now, in my opinion, I think we Africans most of the times think, okay, for us to grow, the people of the Western world need to do this. Our African children who are based abroad need to give us this and that and that. Of which I think it's entirely wrong, right? Because if you're relying on charity to build your house, you may never own a house. You need to put in some work and let people assist you in completing whatever it is you want to build. Now, start being charitable. Like I said, development does not only have to happen when you have $1 million, $10 million, $1 billion. No. If we learn to start volunteering our skills and services, development is going to come. Take, for instance, you guys, a community, a typical community anywhere. It doesn't matter what country in Africa. You decide, hey, we really, really need a school, right? Now, there's certain things that you need to buy to make this happen. Now, if you are an architect, you can say, hey, I love my community. I want this school to be here because my children are going to attend this school. My grandchildren are going to go to this school. You can volunteer and draw the plan without asking anyone to pay you. This is development you're bringing. Once you volunteer and say, hey, I'm going to draft a good plan for a nice structure, which is going to be a school for my community. Someone else volunteers and says, hey, I'm a builder. I'm going to work on the roof if I have people who can help me out. The sawman says, hey, I'm going to fell a few trees and prepare the wood that will be needed to build. Young men in the community volunteer and say, we're going to dig the foundation for this school. You've already done something without using money. You're using your natural strength, your natural intelligence, and your natural resources to start a foundation of a school without asking anyone for money, right? And if we start thinking like this, you realize if the government only awarded, say, 10 million to build that school, and we volunteer some of the physical labor, you realize that you can build a very fantastic school and actually run it without having to reach out to other organizations or foundations to assist you in doing that. So that said, I mean, it goes back to our mentality. We really need to change a lot of things that will foster growth and development in our communities, but most especially, we have to start thinking out of the box. We need to stop depending on charity and other people doing stuff for us versus we doing these things ourselves and using what we have to get what we want. And now that said, let's move on to the next point, which is point number 7. Stop the blame game. Now, I know that it's human nature to never take responsibility for our actions versus just put it on other people. And this is something that, in my opinion, is very, very common in our African community. We like to blame. We blame our ancestors for selling our brothers to slavery or to slave traders. We blame our ancestors for letting the white people in. We blame our government for not bringing development to our communities. We blame our parents for not working hard enough to send us to the right schools. We blame, it's just we keep blaming and blaming. We blame everybody versus ourselves for everything that is going wrong, right? But now when a community is not developing like it should, or development is not growing as fast as it normally should, I think everyone living in that community has something to contribute. Because this is the thing. You cannot blame your parents for not sending you to certain schools. You did go to school. Some people will blame their parents for not sending them to school at all. Now, it's never too late to do anything, right? It's never too late to go to school and all of that. How about now you're in a position where you can figure some of this out? How about you just try doing that? So I think we should stop. We blame poverty. We blame underexposure. We blame a lot of things on the reasons why our continent as a whole is underdeveloped. But I think if we stop the blame game and start taking action, things are going to be a lot better. We cannot continue blaming slave trade that happened 200 years ago. We can't continue blaming colonization that happened 100 years ago. What can we do to right some of the wrongs of the past? That's what we should be focusing on. We should spend less time blaming A, B, C, D, E, and just take responsibility for the fact that we live here now. We want this place to be a certain way, and just do things that are going to make this place comfy enough for us to live in. I think that is the right attitude to have. And that said, let's move on to the next point, which is point number 8. Point number 8, stop being entitled. Now, in my opinion, most Africans are very entitled. We think someone somewhere has to do something for things to happen. We don't think, okay, I can also do this in order for this thing to happen. Now, the reason why I decided to put this point on my list of 10 things that we as Africans need to do to foster development and growth in our community is because, I come from a country where people are very, very entitled. You know, you have the family puts money together, they help one person to get into a government office, for instance, or let's go to something as basic as teachers training college. You go to that school, you become a teacher. Now, the family does not ask themselves, this teaching school that we send our kid to go get trained at, how much do they make a salary, right? But they expect this one person to carry the load of the entire family of 40 people. And we're actually so entitled to this help. You hear statements like, oh, we sent you to school, so you have to take care of your cousins, your grandma, your dad, your mom. That's just ridiculous, because these are some of the reasons why we even are unable to fight some corrupt practices in our community. Because how can you expect someone to make cake out of dust? It doesn't happen. You need flour to do that. Now, if we are too entitled, oh, the white people messed up our continent, they have to fix it. Oh, our leaders did this, they have to do this. Let's start holding our government officials accountable. That's number one. But we should not be entitled to charity. We should not be entitled to help. The only thing that we need to be doing is putting in the work to bring the change that we so badly want. Entitlement is something that, in my opinion, is an African thing, and especially for Cameroonians. We are very, very entitled. Oh, you have to support me. You have to do this. You have to do that. What are you doing for yourself? This is a question that we need to ask ourselves every morning when we wake up from bed. Am I waiting for someone to help me out, holding on to blind hope? Oh, I'm sure the youths of today are going to fix the problem. No. What if the youths mess it up completely? We don't need to be holding on to this blind hope. Oh, when my child graduates from school and becomes a minister, they're going to fix this. How much is a minister's salary? You cannot expect someone to be this productive. You put extra burdens on them and expect good results. It's not going to happen. Most people are going to crack under pressure. So we need to tone down on our spirit of entitlement. Nobody owes us anything. Stuff has happened. Let's let that stay in the past where it belongs and just move on gracefully and build a better and bigger community for ourselves and for our children or grandchildren yet to be born. Now, that said, let's move on to point number 9. Point number 9 is a point that I really felt the need to include at the end of the video because it deals with culture. And basically, it is for us to stop holding on to unnecessary culture. Now, I know most of our culture has been passed down from one generation to the next. But one thing we need to realize is that some of the traditions and cultures that our ancestors put in place did reflect the times that they were living in. People basically just had to wake up in the morning, go to the farm, come back, make food, eat, and start again the next day, right? People did not really have jobs to go to. The infrastructure that we have today did not exist 1,000 years ago. So why are we holding on to a tradition that made sense 1,000 years ago? I'll give an example. Most cultures in Africa, especially Cameroon, when it comes to celebrating dead people, we're very, very, like, we put in our all. We do everything to make sure the person gets the most fantastic burial. You have situations of people lying in hospitals, ill, they can't even afford their treatment. And you don't see the family members putting resources together to say, hey, let's help this person, right? We wait, and when the person dies, they start fishing family members from left, right, center, even people who have voluntarily disappeared. We look for a way to fish them out and say, hey, you have to bring a goat, you have to bring a pig. And you end up having a burial for someone who died because maybe they could not even afford proper medical care. You have a funeral that is worth 5 times what they needed to survive. And it's not just people who are sick in the hospital. You have people who are struggling. They have the potential, but they don't have the resources to do certain things. Now, instead of families to focus on saying, hey, we have these many young people in the family, let's make it a goal. Every year we put money together and open a business for someone, or just push them towards the career paths that they've decided to take. We don't do that. But as soon as someone dies or one of these people die, you start tasking family members left and right to say, bring a pig, bring dad, blankets, and all of that. What is all of that for? Because if we're putting these things together and it would actually raise this person from the dead, oh yes, count me in. I'm very, very okay with that. And it's not just with death. It goes to marriage and many other things where we waste resources, basically. Just because, okay, it's our culture, it's our tradition, you know? People who were living back then were idle. When someone died was the only time they had to celebrate something, or when someone was getting married. That was pretty much life at that time. You live, you die. But now we have so many things that are taking away some of the wealth that we try to amass for ourselves. Why are we spending so much on things that are unnecessary? And this is not just with people who live in the continent of Africa. Sadly enough, even those of us who live in the Western world, hold on to some of these weird cultures. You know, a person is sick, they die, you were doing a GoFundMe for $20,000 to transport the corpse back home. Now, I get it that it's our culture, but this person could not even afford a flight ticket to go back to whatever African country they came from. Why are you now putting money together to transport his or her corpse to be buried somewhere? And the saddest thing is, we are very, very fast at copying other cultures. We copied a lot of Western culture. I don't have to name the things that we've copied from the Westerners. Why don't we copy some of the things that will actually help us foster growth and development instead of wasting resources every day? You know, so not to talk too much about this, let's start new traditions that reflect the times that we're in. Let us let go of some cultures that are not necessary. And even some of the new cultures that are going on today, if it's not going to help you, do not do it. Don't spend 50 or however amount. Let me not put a number to it. But don't spend so much in celebrating Christmas when you don't even understand who Christ is. Why are you holding on to that tradition of every year I have to do this, something big for Christmas? I mean, it's okay to just enjoy with the rest of the world, but don't make it a do or die affair when it's really not your business to do that. So that said, let's move on to the last point of this video, which is point number 10. We need to fight corruption. Putting aside most of the other things that are plaguing our African communities or that are a reason for the underdevelopment of our continent, corruption is something that has dug really, really deep into the African community. Now, when I say corruption, I'm not just referring to the government. I'm referring to each and every citizen who is participating in corrupt practices. Now, you go to a school, you're trying to get admission for your child, and you're told, hey, we're full. And you say you're going to pay so much money so that you can get my child in. Now, because the other person too is hungry, they actually need the money to help their family, they would accept it. You're a part of the problem. Corruption is not just at the level of government officials, it's on the citizens too. Now, typically in Cameroon, we have entrance exams like ENAM, we have government exams to get into training schools, right? And typically what happens is when these, we call it concours, when these concours or exams are launched, normally they'll tell you they need 20 people. And there's 1 million young people who need to apply to get into these schools. Now, when this announcement is made, usually you have a group of people who would just say, oh, I'm not even going to bother to apply because I don't have money to bribe to get in. Why would you just make that assumption? Because people get into those schools by merit. You have other people who are like, okay, let me just start looking for my 15 million, or they start looking for where to put money to get into those schools. And then you show up to this person's office, you're saying, hey, I would like my child, or I would like to get into this school. This is 16 million. What do you expect them to do? Even myself sitting here, I'm just going to take it and put you where you're actually supposed to be. Some people even take these monies and these people still end up not getting into the school, and they're like, oh, we tried, but it didn't work. They come up with a story, you know? And when after you do that, some people, you're taking a loan of 16 million because you want to bribe to get into a school. And once you graduate from that school, you start collecting bribe from other people to pay back what you borrowed. And to me, that is just wrong in its entirety. So corruption is a thing that is very common in our African milieu. I know we would argue that every country in the world has corrupt practices, but ours is just, we're going above and beyond with it. And in order to fight corruption, we as citizens of any country in Africa need to not put ourselves in positions where we are part of these corrupt practices. And we also need to hold our leadership and other people who are involved in corrupt practices accountable, right? And not just blame it on corruption, you know. Let's find a way to put corruption to an end. So we need to start putting in the work to bring change and development that we need in our various communities, and also to prepare a better place for generations to come. Now, that said, we've come to the end of this video. I really do appreciate you for watching as always. And please remember, sharing is caring and knowledge is power. Therefore, sharing knowledge is caring powerfully. So do not forget to like and share this video. And until next time, you've been watching What Time Is It? Thank you.